Okay, so jumping off from last tutorial where we created the turntable and then started rendering these different sequences out, 120 frames, and they were all dumped into these folders here. Wireframe, camera, render, got 120 of those. Now I want to take these into After Effects, which you could do Premiere, Adobe Premiere if you wanted to. I mean, it all kind of reads the same, but I prefer After Effects because it is a pretty more intense post program. In other words, like you can do more motion graphics and a lot of color correction. And I just, the possibilities are a little bit more in After Effects as is Premiere now. So you have these sequences; they're all labeled right from your Maya photo that you had. You had three different. We've rendered out three different passes. So we can go ahead and actually close Maya up. Let's say we're done. And open up Adobe After Effects. I can find it on my computer. I'm looking on my other screen right now, so I haven't ghosted you guys. There we go. It's probably going to pop up on my other screen here, so I have to continue talking for a few more minutes. I actually have I downloaded 2019, but I just updated it to 2020. I haven't messed with After Effects in a few months. But what we'll be doing basically is just compositing a few timelines and kind of making like a little sweet little sequence fading in and out, and I'll just show you how to set up some keyframes. Once this thing finally starts loading, I can actually move some windows around. Now my whole screen is locked up. There we go with that. There we go with that. Sorry guys, coming back at you. There we go. This is After Effects. You're probably going to get the window box. You can learn some tutorials, whatever you want to learn. This is on your Adobe account, so you should have it, or it's downloadable at school. So this opens up. What is all this? Your composition. You'll be creating compositions and layering different things in this timeline down here. So before I create a new composition, I like to create a composition from my sequences that I'll import. So what I'm going to do is import my sequences. File, import, file. I need to find my big folders full of files, my render demo, my images. I'm going to import my diffuse layer first. So basically, it's going to have you import all these images in, but what you can do is just select the first one, and then you should get the option box coming up here, TIFF sequence. That's what you want to import. You don't want to like have this unchecked because it'll just import with this one still in there. So you want this whole TIFF sequence. So you want to import that. Now if you look up here, well, I didn't really mean to do that. So you can preview it up here. There's my TIFF sequence. Well, what I'm going to do is right off the bat, I'm going to drop this thing down in the timeline. And this creates a new composition. And this composition basically is going to be based off the size of the format here. So if you go to your composition settings, it's 960 by 540, which isn't very big, which, okay, let's take it back and Control Z, just make a new composition, and I'm going to make this 1280 by 720. Frame rate 30. Change it to 24. I'm going to keep it at 30. It may be a little different than what you rendered it out. Usually it's best to kind of keep in the same format of what you're rendering, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal right here. If not, I can show you how to do timing. This will be your start time code, your duration of whatever is, and I'll show you how to like scale it down because obviously we're not going to have 4 seconds. That may be at 4 seconds. I'm not real sure. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this thing. So you can middle mouse key to kind of like zoom in. But what this did, it created a new composition at 1280, 720, and this is exactly, if you run your timeline over here, where your play button is, wherever it is buried over here, notice this thing runs 29 frames, 9 seconds. Let's go ahead and import that sequence back in. Because everything's going to change when I bring this back in here. Alright, so now here we go. So obviously this thing is not to scale. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the other ones in there too so I can scale everything at the same time. Because all you really got to do is just kind of treat it like scaling this like this, but you can hit shift and it will scale it uniformly. But I want to make sure all my sequences are scaled the same exact. So I'm going to import the other one in. Drop that down there. And what that's doing, that is adding it directly in behind it. It's there, you just can't see it. So if you got these little eyeball thing here, you close it, it's there, you just can't see it. Let's drop in the wireframe. Alright, now I'm going to select all of these. I'm just going to scale these things up to fit the composition. You could actually go up to composition, where is it at? Fit to comp. And it fits it perfectly. So now basically, if you were to hide these, you have your occlusion map, you have your diffuse, and everything is basically to the right length. So if I go ahead and preview play this, it just loops back and forth. To me, it's going a little fast. So what I'm going to do is actually adjust my timeline to extend it some. So I'm going to look at my composition settings. I'm going to extend it out to 5 seconds. And what that means, it's going to stop there. Or actually, that's the 5 seconds. Now I'm going to actually stretch these timelines out a little bit. Time stretch. I want these things to be exactly 5 seconds. Just going to make my animation run a little longer. Gives me a little bit more time to do what I want to do. Slows it down a little bit, not much. That's why I like whenever you do render it out as 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, you can always kind of fudge a little bit in After Effects if it's not matching up something. So, and if you notice, I don't have a background on these things. I didn't render these things out as backgrounds. So if I wanted to right click and add a solid, a different color maybe, say like red, which I'm not going to use, and layer that solid button after. Now I have a red background for everything, but I'm not going to use that one. You could actually use a movie file and have the movie file playing in behind it. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. You can do the same way you did in Photoshop. You can take this one, put it below the occlusion map, and you can multiply this. So the occlusion map is basically multiplied on that. I want to take my wireframe and multiply it on the occlusion map. So now I've got like a cool, that I've got rendered. You could do something like that. You could make these things kind of fade in and out. So like if this is your wireframe render pass, you could actually split this. You could move this sequence in here so it doesn't actually pop in here for a minute. Or I'm sorry, this is my diffuse. Multiply that. Say if I started it out like that, where I just wanted it coming in, then fading away. And the reason why you see the resolution there, it's running full right now. You can like adjust these to run like half. They'll run a little bit faster, but they usually have to take a minute to kind of render real time. And then when the screen clackers green light, it'll start running a little bit better, because I think in the video you may be seeing it kind of like, but it won't render out like that. Like if I just kind of slowly scroll, but you notice how the wireframe just kind of went away. You can kind of make these things fade in and out on there, mask them up, use masking techniques. What I'm going to do is have it kind of go from occlusion map wireframe to, or actually I'm going to extend my wireframe out, have it go occlusion map. So basically what I want to do is I want to show the occlusion map, I want to show the occlusion map with the wireframe, and then I slowly want the diffuse to come in, and then I want the wireframe, I want to keep the occlusion map on there, I want the wireframe to slowly fade out. And you can do it by doing this. Real abrupt changes, so you need to kind of go fade in, fade out. Well, if you click these little arrows down here, you can kind of start adjusting the opacity, keyframing the opacity of these things. So in other words, right now you're at 100% opacity. Well, I don't want the opacity to come in till another maybe a couple frames into it. So I'm going to hit my keyframe right there. Then I'm going to go back out to my beginning and I'll just crank it down to 0. So now it basically kind of fades in. And I want my diffuse to fade in too. I'm going to do the same thing. Give it a few frames. Keyframe it. Beginning. Crank it down to 0. Then I want my wireframe to kind of slowly fade out. So up here I have a keyframe up here. It's 100%. I want it to slowly fade. This is the way to add a keyframe. Then we'll add another one where it goes back down to 0. And you can actually select these keyframes and move them if it's not working out like you want to. In the beginning, I kind of wanted to kind of fade up from the black, so I'm going to actually take the occlusion render, which is the only one kind of showing at the beginning, and I'm going to slowly bring it in, kind of a quick turn. There it goes. Texture. Then I want this both to slowly fade to black. Collapse that layer. trying to see why my timelines, it won't let me go past it right there. So I know I want it to be 0 right here. So I am going to go right here, start slowly fading it away. I'm going to create a keyframe there. Create a keyframe right there. Now I'm going to go there and crank it to 0. Crank that to 0. Let's see what we got. It's kind of like the resolution's kind of being a little weird. I don't like the really fast flow, so what I'm going to do is select both of these right here. Where's my 100%? Shift select. Nope, it's not working. They're both selected so they can both move out. There they go. For some reason my occlusion map. Okay, not really. It just faded like that. That's cool. Background too. Forgot about background. You could put a movie background in there if you want to. I'll just import something. Let's see what I've got. Got this max headroom. Wherever it was at. It's like this right here, but it was actually a movie file somewhere floating around here in the midst. Or actually, maybe this overlay pack might be kind of cool. I have some cool little static little glitches in the back. It's just a movie file, like an overlay for like a VHS type thing. But nevertheless, it's a movie file, which means it's going to be constant motion. So I'm going to keep it back in the back. Why is it? Oh, because everything is multiplied. Let me see. Let me pause this real quick and figure out an easy way to do this. Okay, I had a brain tease there for a minute there. I had to remember something. I'll back this up, show you what went on, why it was over. Was the problem I was having was it just wasn't like going in behind the layers, and that's because I had these set to multiply. So it's basically multiplying that in. So that means we get to do something really cool, which I didn't think it would do here. But since After Effects is a composition layer, what you can do basically is pre-compose these layers into another layer that you can do stuff. In other words, say you have like a lot of animation in this or a lot of stuff going on in here and like you're getting too far down, you just don't know, you can actually group all these layers together, add them to a separate composition, and then just keep composition and composing that into other stuff, in other words. The way to represent that. So in other words, I had this like cool glitch thing I wanted to make as a background, but the problem was it's overlaying top of it because I have these set to multiply, and it's not giving it. It goes back there because this is a normal, but the multiply was like not allowing it to. So there's really easy way to work around that is I'm going to select all these layers right here. I'm going to go to layer pre-compose, and then it's going to ask you to move all the attributes in the new composition or leave them all. You want to move everything into the new composition. Okay. You see the way now this is turned into one track right here. It's what we created inside, But now you can compose items with this composition, and if you want to enter this one, all you do is like double click on it. Now you're back into there, and you can go back and change stuff within the initial composition. So, and it added these tabs right here. This composition 1, pre-compose. Now we can add this glitch in behind here. But I want to fade it in at the same time. Or I don't know, it's kind of cool. For one, I want to extend it out. I don't have enough to extend it out for, so what I need to do is Control D. Kind of push that one to the end. So it kind of jumps from one track to another. It's the same track, it's just kind of start right there. Since it's random, it really doesn't matter anyway. But I kind of wanted to fade in and fade out with the other thing the more I look at it, so I am going to it comes in on like the 4th second or something like that. I'm going to have my background kind of fade in afterwards, so it really doesn't matter. So opacity 100, and instead of having it fade in like that, I'm just going to have it fade in really fast. Instead of a slow fade, in other words, I'm going to have it kind of fade in pretty fast right there. So it kind of starts clicking in behind there, and I'll do the exact same thing on the way out. Right there, I want to start fading out. So I'm going to go to this one down here, transform, get a keyframe, let's go like maybe 1 frame over, really fast since it's a glitch anyway. So you see my keyframes are really close together on that. So I'm pretty happy with that. It actually is in that movie file, that glitch tape thing. So you can see the actual audio wave. You can actually turn the wave level down if you want to, but I'm going to keep it in there because it's kind of a cool glitch thing. Now, say I want to go and kind of color correct this whole thing. You know, well, the sky's the limit on that too. The best way to do that though is to add an adjustment layer. And I'm going to put this over the whole thing. So now we can kind of see where we're at. This. And I'm going to look at my effects here. You get your effects over here too. You can kind of search for them, but for the most part, it's pretty comparable to Photoshop in the fact you got your blurs and everything, your color, your levels. Being that this is a movie editing, post-production, motion graphics type program, you do have a lot of like different styles of stuff for like different effects for movies and stuff like that. You can add noise to stuff, which I love noise. I'm gonna go color correction, just add some levels in here. Curves are always good. So what this did is this added your effects to this adjustment layer, and this adjustment layer is going to affect everything below here. So I'm just going to kind of like turn my colors a little different. My greens a little different. Blues. Got that nice grain going on there. It's pretty cool. I'm thinking maybe I want to blur the background a little bit. So I'm going to go to this right here and add like a blur to it. Just a Gaussian blur. Crank it up just a little bit. There we go. It's cool. Now I need it for the second one here, so what I'm going to do is basically Control C, select the next one, click in here, Control V, It brings over the same settings. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go to a lower resolution. Render. Alright, well, let's go ahead and move with this. So I dig this, I like this. I want this sequence to be mine. I want to render this out not as JPEG sequences, but I want this like as an H.2.4 MP4 that I can upload anywhere. Export. Add to Media Encoder. You'll see if you do any kind of research on like how to render out in After Effects, it may send you to render queue. You can do that. I do that sometimes, but I guess you should get in the habit of the Adobe Media Encoder, which you should have downloaded with any kind of editing or movie file program with Adobe. So this kind of gets you working in the Adobe Media Encoder, and you can use the compression a lot better. So let's do that. Let's add to Adobe Media Encoder. I'm pretty sure it's going to add the entire sequence here. I hope so. And it's opening up on my other screen here. That's why I don't like having this, because it mirrors everything. This is Adobe Media Encoder. It takes a minute for it to load up because it's basically going to load up in the queue here. There it is right there. So here is where we can output it how we want to. I'm going to go H.264. You could do that, or an MP4. You could adjust your bit rate how you want it, you know. If it's set for like Vimeo, Twitter, or all these different settings like that. I just usually stick to an H.264. I know it's going to be 1280 720. The output where you want it to send to, I'm just going to send it to my desktop. I'm going to call it my real demo. And see, it's going to save it as an MP4. I'm just going to hit play. You should be able to see a preview of it down here. Just to boot up. I don't think I had to have everything selected. Oh, there it goes, yeah. Pretty fast, it's compressing it nicely. And we're done. So let's check this thing out. If I can find it on my desktop. Here it is. Oh, you know what? I can never run MP4s or QuickTimes on this monitor. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Make sure this thing is working on my other monitor, but I can't preview it in the screen capture. It's really weird. Now it's locked me up. Yeah. So let me switch my screen capture to display 1. And we're still in the dark. Tell me this is not going to happen at the very end of this video. Okay, well, here it is. It's working. But as soon as I switch it to this monitor, it goes away. maybe if I opened up in Windows, let me pause this and see if I can figure this out. The problem is my screen capture, I'm only capturing my second monitor, but I've always had problems playing MP4s on my second monitor with my graphic card. So trying to demo it over here, I'm trying to switch my screen capture back to my monitor one. So hold on. Okay, I just opened it up in a different player. Of our model, I think it could have went on a little longer, maybe have a two-turn, but you know, you could always like double the sequence. It's just going to be on a looping sequence, however you want to do it. But other than that, though, it's kind of a nice way to display, you know, going from like occlusion to look at it. I think this background's a little distracting, but from the initial model, but I think it turned out pretty good. In other words, that's the process of kind of going through After Effects. After Effects is pretty vast. You know, we spend a lot of time with Maya, and we could spend a whole class on After Effects. So I'm going to let you play around with it, but just remember the pre-composing and the keyframes, keyframing stuff. You can change the scale of stuff. Keeping everything in like a 1280 720 is pretty fine for this class. And but yeah, so have fun with that, and looking forward to seeing what you guys and gals come up with. So thanks for watching.